The new multiplayer balance patch has been live for a couple of weeks now in StarCraft 2, and even though all of the changes were relatively minor, especially in isolation, I mean the Lurker takes a little bit longer to burrow, and so does the Widow Mine and the Void Ray. It's a little bit more expensive and it takes a little bit longer to produce. Overall, even though there were nerfs across the board, especially the Protoss versus Zerg matchup, it's become incredibly exciting to watch. The matchup had grown quite still, with Void Ray openers just being the gold standard for several years. But nowadays, even though, I mean, it's 6 seconds, right? Doesn't sound like a lot, but in a game of StarCraft, obviously, that adds up very quickly, especially if you want to go for multiple Void Rays. Even though all of the changes were relatively minor, all things considered, it's once again sparked a huge variety in the Protoss versus Zerg mid-game, late-game, but also even some in the early game too, because, well, we once again see some Glaive the Depth Opener, we see some quick robo facilities as well. Anyways, what I've got for you today, before I blabber on much about unrelated stuff, it's time for a longer game of PvZ, because I noticed that pretty much all the games that I've casted and the games that I've watched recently, they all seem to end by like the 12-minute mark. 12 minutes is like the latest game of PvZ that I've seen. So this game was played, if you're watching this video on the day it goes up, I think it was played 2 days ago, so it should give us a pretty good understanding of what late game PvZ is currently all about, and I think it's going to be quite interesting. Anyways, so first off, in the top right-hand corner of Glittering Ashes, we have Trap, one of the best Protoss players in the world, and his opponent in the opposite corner with the blue Zerg drones. Likewise, also from South Korea, we are looking at DRG, Dongray Goose Main Hatchery. Alright, so here's the thing. Currently, I mean, this may change, right? So if you're watching this video in like a month from now, I wouldn't be surprised if everything is going to be different. But currently, it seems that pretty much all the Protoss openers eventually lead towards a ground toss-based army. So obviously, you can go for a Stargate if you want to. You can go straight into... Oh my god, little Roomba right there was blocking the pylon. Alright, shouldn't really matter all too much. Anyways, you can still open up with a Stargate, you can still add on a Void Ray, but if you want to make like double Stargate Void Ray, every single one of those Void Rays is going to be 50 minerals more expensive, and it also, on top of that, takes like 6 seconds longer to produce, depending on whether or not you chrono boost it. The thing is, even though we still see Stargate openers, and I think this might actually be one, yeah, more often than not, it's either going to be like one Void Ray, or it's going to be like an Oracle or two. From there, you generally speaking transition towards a ground-based army just because it is the more natural transition to go for. The same obviously goes if you go for like a Twilight Council start, right? Say you go for like a Glaive the Depth Opener, or you go for like, I don't know, Dark Templar drops or something along those lines. You may as well start researching Charge and go for a ground-based army. If you open up with a Robo facility instead, usually you get yourself a very quick War Prism out, right? That's pretty nice. But then you may as well follow it up with a couple of Immortals and maybe a Disruptor or two, right? And suddenly, rather than playing a Skytoss army, you're playing a ground-based Protoss army instead. Now, where things get interesting, and I'm secretly hoping that we're going to see that in this particular game as well, while Zerg kind of struggles dealing with that Skytoss-based army, Zerg has some very aggressive counters to the Protoss ground army instead. So, say for example, it's like an Archon Immortal Zealot Storm-based mid-game, like 8 Brute Lords. Oh my god, the body blocking, that was beautiful! Oh, that was so hot, DRG! Did you see that? The Queen right there, like, that was really cute. Anyways, generally speaking, you can ground or you can counter those ground-based Protoss armies really aggressively with like 8 Void Rays. If you have 8 Void Rays out, it's by the way an Oracle start right here, second Oracle also coming up. But if you have like 8 Brute Lords, you can shut down most of those Protoss ground armies. And I think from there, and we haven't really seen a whole lot of that yet, but from there, I think Protoss probably still wants to transition towards a Skytoss late game. But I guess we're going to find out together. I mean, unless this is going to be a very low eco game, but judging so far by the way that this is going, fairly certain that everything is, yeah, opening up as we expect it to. Zerg players also in the past against these relatively low commitment Stargate-based openers. So there's the Twilight Council, by the way. Zerg players in the past would go for a lot of, like, Queen Walks. And if Protoss, for example, would open up with this sort of start, right, where they practically kill nothing, you've invested in the Stargate, you've invested into 2 Oracles as well. Zerg could just like march the Queens across the map and punish you by winning the game. You had to do some sort of damage. Now this is good actually. Yeah, kill 1 more, not bad. Don't lose an Oracle though. So risky. Did he just get another one? Ay. Anyways, if you, didn't do any damage with your Stargate-based opener, Zerg could just sort of kill you. Now, one thing that I have seen quite a bit in the Protoss versus Zerg matchup from Zerg players recently is Void Ray, or sorry, not Void Ray, Nidus Worm follow-ups. Zerg wishes they could make Void Rays. No, they would go for like Nidus Worm follow-ups. I don't think I've casted any of those games yet, but the Nidus Worm did get a small buff, and I guess Queen Walks aren't entirely out of the meta. But the big difference is, of course, that, well, with those classical Queen Marches that we saw through the center of the map, you would do those at hatchery tech, and obviously in order to go for a Nidus Worm, you need to be at the lair, and then you need to actually make the Nidus Worm, so it hits quite a bit later on into the game, and I'm fairly certain that as time progresses, Protoss players are going to be able to defend those relatively easily. I mean, already we see players getting much better at scouting their, corners of the map, right? So right here, the perimeter of the Protoss base is covered here, and I don't think Protoss is really going to be caught off guard in any way, shape, or form. Although, yeah, there could be a Nidus Worm in this area, so I like what Trap is doing. Making sure that he doesn't actually go down to anything silly. Alright, so DRG pretty much always plays Mutas, right? We probably know that. Mutas are kind of like his go-to unit in a lot of the matchups. Protoss versus Zerg, once again, definitely an option for him here as well. Again, against Stargate-based openers, usually, against Void Ray-based openers, I guess the ones that we saw in the past, usually going for Mutas wasn't ideal. But, against someone who's transitioning towards ground toss, Mutalisks are definitely, once again, an option. Anyways, for now, he's upgrading +2 melee while simultaneously producing tons and tons of roaches. So, yeah, he's only lost a handful of links so far. +1 melee here, dealing a bunch of damage, actually. Trap probably needs to warp in a few reinforcements. Okay. This is just a small check right here from our Protoss player to make sure that the Zerg player is being held, or not held, he's being kept honest. Making sure that he doesn't play too greedily here. This is one of those small pushes that could accidentally win you the game against a weaker Zerg player, but DRG, he started making army in time. So there's the Spire. And there's the Infestation Pit as well, so I guess we are going to be going into a relatively quick hive. Protoss right now, double robotics facility production, so we're gonna go straight into double immortal play here. And now finally do we have the forge follow-up as well. It always seems to me that these forges are rather late. Wouldn't have minded seeing those come up a little bit sooner. Maybe even a double forge at this stage in the game, because those upgrades are gonna be far behind the Zergs. Anyways, yeah, this makes, I guess, a little bit of sense right here for DRG. He's gonna go straight into a Baneling Nest as well now with +2, well, about halfway done. He's going to be able to finish up the Baneling speed upgrade together with that +2 relatively early on into the game. A couple of Phoenixes coming up as well. Alright. Interesting. I guess it's just one Phoenix for now. Almost seems like a misclick. Yeah, I don't think I like that all too much. Anyways, are we going to go for a round of Mutas? Maybe he made it because he saw the Spire? I actually like how he's kind of trying to hide the Spire over here by planting a couple of those Overlords above it. No, he just spends his gas right here on a bunch of Ravagers. So, fairly certain the reason why he's gone for the Baneling Nest is to not die to, like, a mid-game timing attack from the Protoss player. And the reason why he's gone for a Hive and a Spire is to go straight into the Greater Spire. So, Trap right now with a few hallucinated Phoenixes. Scouts it out as well, and he knows what he's going to go up against. This is usually the timing at which Trap wants to either start going for a move out or expend. Okay. So, the problem is if you don't do anything about this, Zerg is soon gonna have, they're gonna have like 10 Brute Lords up in the air. And when you're going up against a Brute Lord based army that's got significant amounts of numbers, you're just gonna get absolutely destroyed. So he's still kind of sprinkling in a couple of Phoenixes at once. I think those are mostly meant for like a bunch of Mutas to suddenly show up. You might be able to counter those. Banelings with Baneling speed? Not done just yet. +2 melee actually is a little bit earlier here. Now, +2 is enough to one-shot those probes. Battery overcharge isn't really going to be able to do that much. But, 7 probes, I guess, is not really the end of the world either. Alright. So, Trap has still got about a minute until Brute Lords are out. But if he wants to try and win this game before the Brutes are out, he needs to go. Ay. Zealot right here sleeping on the job. There is an Oracle still available with some energy, but the other Oracle ended up dying. There's 4 High Templar right here instead of that Warp Prism. Greater Spire, though, looming on the horizon. Good defense, actually, all things considered. Despite the fact that that shouldn't have happened in the first place. It does slow down Trap a little bit over here, though. Yeah, the creep spread apparently is good enough for him to now actually go home. So what do you do from here? So now we know we're gonna be seeing a bunch of Brute Lords out on the map. Okay, first order of business, try and keep those units back. Do a bit of a run by right here with Zealots. Not a bad idea at all. The entire Zerg army now making a beeline all the way towards the left side of the map. Mama ship starts up right as the fleet beacon finishes. I like it. Brute Lords are coming up right now as well, though. So my question is, are we now gonna go into a Skytools-based army anyway? Is it still worth going to multiple Stargates and then like Tempest or Brute Lord or Brute Lords? You know, Protoss wishes they could make Brute Lords, just like Zerg wishes they could make Void Raids. I mean carriers or yeah, okay. So there's the additional Stargates. I think you probably also want to go straight into +1 flyer attacks then, right? Yeah, upgrades here for Trap are actually quite late, but I guess it's because he's been transitioning like 17 times. So look at the dynamics so far, right? This is very different than what we used to see. Trap trying to see if we can win earlier on, but so far it's really not happened. Excellent creep spread right here by DRG, by the way. DRG is actually a really underrated Zerg player. He's amongst the very best in the world, but no one really talks about him. Moving on into GSL as well. Showcasing some pretty good games. Anyways. Stargates are finishing +2 or +1 rather here for the flyer attacks coming up. And we're gonna go for Tempests. Okay. Ultralisk Cavern. +3 melee, +1 carapace. Okay, Revelation right there. Apparently a couple of units here on the right side of the map also got destroyed. And actually DRG, what was that? Like a group of roaches? I think so. Yeah, probably like 9 roaches or so that ended up going down there. He's now going for Viper, Infestor. I guess the potential for Ultralisks, Brute Lords, Lings, Banes, Ravagers, Queen? Like, what are we doing? How many hands do you have, DRG? Most of those units need a separate control group. Okay, we're still gonna start building up a couple of the spores. So, I kind of expected Protoss to try and hit an attack before these big boys were out. And then I also kind of expected DRG to go for an attack when Protoss didn't. Because at that point in the game, there really wasn't much to deal with the Brutes. But I guess, yeah, it doesn't really... Like, usually when you attack with Brute Lords, it's a one-way trip. Zealots right here on the left side of the map. Well, caught by about a gajillion spine crawlers, give or take. Alright, here we go, though. Look at this army. So, it's Immortal Archon, High Templar with a Prism, Tempest, of course. There's a Mama ship, there's a few sentries. Alright, interestingly enough, why did we do that? Okay, there's still a few High Templar underneath. Okay, I was gonna say, I thought maybe we should keep a couple more, but he still has 4 High Templar, which is quite a bit. Alright, let's see. This is a very complex Protoss army to control properly. Ravagers and Banelings thinking about coming in from the side. Okay, good fungal growths right there as well. Couple of abductions there by the Zerg player. Storming his own units here, which is not ideal at all. And Banelings right here rolling through some of that army too. Roaches don't care about Storm nearly as much. And what an exceptionally chaotic fight here. Okay, huge Stalker reinforcement. 74 Zerglings on the back of this already as well, though. I guess DRG anticipating this follow-up right here from Trap. That was both players microing with like 400 plus actions per minute. Easy. I kind of want to go back. Do you mind if I go back? I'm going to go back. I want to see that fight a second time. Because that was a very different army. So, hold up. Let me pause for just a sec. So, I think Zerg probably has the Roaches, Ravagers, Lings, and Banes on a control group. He's got the Queens on a control group. He's got the Brute Lords on a control group. He's got the Infestors on a control group. And he also has the Vipers on a control group. I guess you can kind of combine the the Vipers together with the Brute Lords, but this is not an easy army to control whatsoever. Likewise, right here for the Protoss player, I'm assuming the Tempests are either together with the Mama ship or they're by themselves. You obviously don't want to have the Mama ship fly too far forward, so the Mothership has this really small, or like this really slow turn radius where if you like tell it to go over here and then you tell it right away to go back, it will go like this, right? It will go in a really wide arc, and that's usually the moment at the apex of that arc where Zergs will abduct that Mothership. So you kind of need the Mama ship on a separate control group, or maybe with a couple of Tempests here. Obviously, the Prism has to be on its own. The High Templar have to be on their own. You want to make sure that the sentries are also in the front of your selection control groups. So, like, both players here are microing with at least, I would say, 4 control groups worth of stuff. It is very different than what we used to see, at least. All right, so let's watch this again. Here's the Oracle as well, which is also another thing. You can't really just boot with the rest of your army, because then it would just YOLO forward and just die. All right, so Revelation right here, allowing those Tempests to shoot at their maximum range. At the same time, though, we do have a couple of those Spore Crawlers over here that are also detectors. So you can see that the Zerg slowly gets more vision of this army. That's probably the reason why it decides to actually run that Zerg army back, because honestly, you can't really go in there with Banelings, right, when you can't see the units. Overextension right here by Trap, though, so those Tempests do get killed. Storms right here as well by Trap on a lot of his own units, so those Archons eventually die. Roaches and Ravagers not microed out of the Storm, but I think they're probably just here to protect and try and buy as much time for those Brute Lords to come up. And then, before the Stalkers were warped in, we already see like 80 Zerglings here on the back of this. So DRG was already thinking about what the next move from the Protoss player was going to be too. And I guess since there were only really Brute Lords left over after that battle, Stalkers make some sense, and then the Stalkers get absolutely shut down by the Zerglings. Alright, so here we are. Ooh, he cancels the Carriers and goes for Void Rays instead. Yeah, I guess if your opponent is gonna go for a bunch of Corruptors and stuff, and Brute Lords, not a bad choice whatsoever. Those Zerglings, by the way, are at +3 with Adrenal Glands. So look how quickly they kill a Nexus. That Nexus fell in a heartbeat. They have a very slow heartbeat. Probably need to get that checked out. Alright. Ultras are soon gonna be upgraded as well. Infestor, Viper, Brute Lord, Queen, Ling, Corrupt. Like, this is... Mere mortals can't really micro an army like this, man. I don't know how the top-level Zerg players do it. They make it look so clean. I mean, that wasn't very clean, I guess, from the Zerg, but... Anyhow. Trap right now. Retaking another base up north. Look at this. He's making 2 Immortals there at once while making also 3 Void Rays. The reason why he's adding on the Immortals is because he's anticipating an Ultralisk transition. So we're having Ultra Brute Lord, I guess? That would be kind of cool. Zerglings at this point, though, they were started with their upgrades really early on, and they don't really shine until, like, the last couple of minutes in this game. I mean, they didn't really seem that good, I guess, until the +2 melee was done. So he started up this, yeah, this transition quite a bit. Look at the creep spread so far forward. Yeah, he needs to kill that first. There's no way you're going to be able to catch your opponent off guard with a bunch of Zealot run-bys if the creep is at your front door. Dark Shrine comes up. I like it. Yeah, I think this is gonna be a lot more refined in like a month or 2 from now. So you can see that Trap is experimenting with loads of different things. And he almost seems a little bit conflicted as to what the best move is, right? And that makes sense. Thinking about a small little hit squad right here to still kill that that hatchery. Alright. Yeah, not gonna happen though. You need to recall, bro. Gotta get out of there. You gotta get out of there. Unless you want to really kill the hatch. Okay. Yeah, Zerg apparently pretty happy just spreading creep and playing like an absolute mad lad. We do see quite a bit of static defense, but not nearly as many of these Spore Crawlers as we used to in the past, and not nearly as many of those Photon Cannons either. I've casted a lot of Protoss versus Zergs over the last couple of years, where Protoss literally has 50 Photon Cannons and Zerg literally has like 75 Spore Crawlers. Kind of wild. Well, maybe we'll still get there, right? So this is, I know it's not the longest game of PvZ ever either, but it's the longest game that I could find. Maybe we'd still get there eventually, right? To like that strange stalemate situation. But at least the early to mid game, and then the transition towards late game, seems infinitely more interesting to me than it used to in the past. And maybe we will need to see a couple of adjustments as well going forward, right? Maybe the Zerg late game is gonna prove to be too powerful now. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, in theory, if you micro this army perfectly, right? Which, again, only like a handful of people can do in the world. Like, genuinely. Only like maybe a dozen people can actually micro that Zerg late game army well. And I think DRG is one of them. But this is one of those army compositions where you look at it as a Protoss player, you're like, what do I actually do? Because theoretically, if this is microed correctly, and again, you need like literally 600 actions per minute, like 10 buttons a second in order to pull this off. But if this is microed really well, it seems like an army that is near impossible to destroy. Anyways. Nice move right here by Trap, though, actually catching a lot of those units off guard. Yeah, Zerglings and Queens not part of the army for a little while. We do see another abduction right there, so eventually, okay, the Mama ship gets destroyed. No Observer up overhead anymore, I guess, because of those Spore Crawlers. Neural Parasite right there, changing that Archon temporarily as well. Archon ends up destroying the Ultralisk. And now all of a sudden, actually, we have a lot of dead weight right here and 16 Corruptors that have absolutely no flying units to kill. Hold up. Trap actually just found a huge angle here. So this is what I mean. Like, the margin for error for the Zerg is so small there, where you can find yourself in such a weird spot. I think you gotta keep going. Because if you back off right now, there's gonna be like 10 Brute Lords. Ultralisks, derping out. Okay, there's 7 Brute Lords coming up. Those might actually be in range. He sees those right now. Trap, that is. Okay, yeah, he does blink forward right there. Snipes one of the Vipers. Great movement right here by our Protoss player. Ultralisks are coming up, though. Infestors still fungling whatever they can. That Immortal is having a blast, though. Yeah, just chomping through as many of those Ultras as he can. Another Infestor coming from the top section of the map right there. Nice micro once again by DRG. Roach Ward, I think, ended up being killed. Anyways, eventually the Brute Lords are out, though. And while we do see some cute micro, those Corruptors finally found a target to kill. Additional Stalkers coming in. Trap is getting way too ballsy with the Stalker Warpins, man. I think I've seen like 20 Stalkers go down in this game unnecessarily. Yeah. There's a little bit of slippiness here, but with some more refinement, I think this would look actually quite a bit better here for Protoss. That was close. If those Stalkers would have shown up, I guess, like 30 seconds earlier, then maybe they could have, like, capitalized on it. Alright. Small Protoss hit squad. Bottom right-hand corner, moving forward. Both players still have a huge amount of... Ooh, a huge amount of economy. Look at that. Spine Crawlers and Spore Crawlers are being brought to the front. Because Trap, I guess, overextended with his... Observers, like, he didn't clear out any of the creep there. If he had an Observer, you know, with that previous fight, I think he could have shut down the creep spread on his way towards the Zerg side of the map, and then this wouldn't have been possible. Now, suddenly, DRG is showing up. Brute Lord, normally it's a one-way trip. But not when you have this much static defense underneath them. Okay. Base in the center will be destroyed. There's a couple nice fungals once again here by DRG. Brute Lords are having an absolute field day. GG is cold. And eventually, it is gonna be DRG who obtains the victory in a very interesting game of PvZ. Isn't it kind of fascinating, though, how a relatively small list of changes can shake up the metagame in PvZ so much? Excellent game right here by both players. And congrats, of course, to DRG.